Welcome. My name is Richard Jones, the CEO of Weigh-In, and I'm pleased to be joined by Fatemeh Khatibloo, who's a VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about privacy and personalization. So first question, do you think personalization and privacy can coexist?
Yes. I think that we have had a bit of a paradox, and it does sound paradoxical to request or want those things, but there are a lot of ways to bridge that paradox. And I think we've moved into an era where consumers expect personalization, they want relevant content, they want relevant offers, but they want their data used fairly and ethically and well. So yeah, I do think that they can coexist, and I think that's where our industry has to go.
So it's obvious to anybody that's interested in the news and is opening papers and stuff that privacy continues to dominate headlines and has done for quite a while now. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could step back and how did we arrive at this new age of privacy?
Well, I would say that over the past 8 to 10 years, we have seen an explosion in marketers and advertisers' ability to reach people. And by people, I don't necessarily mean Richard, I mean a device that belongs to Richard. We have found ways to connect devices to people, and we've run full steam ahead with those things without considering the consequences, both on privacy, but also on experience. So we've built all of this data, we've built all of these technologies to connect that data, and we've built all these experiences that we think our customers want. But we haven't really asked them, and we haven't really taken that into account.
So how do you think the privacy regulatory environment will play out in the US?
Well, I don't think that we will get a federal law in 2019, and frankly, I'm skeptical that it'll happen in 2020. What that means for marketers and businesses is that we're going to have to comply with a patchwork of state-level laws.
Ouch.
Very much ouch. And I think that when we look at that and we think about what all of these proposed bills and, for example, the California Consumer Privacy Act and Europe's GDPR, all of them purport and want to give control and transparency back to consumers. No one is saying we want to do away with innovation. No one is saying kill the ad business or the ad industry. What we're saying is this is information and data about people, and we should be a little bit more transparent about it and let them in on what is happening and let them have some control.
So obviously that's the US. We've seen the EU's GDPR be rolled out. How is privacy regulations being kind of impacted and rolled out across other jurisdictions around the world outside of Europe and the US?
Yeah, so any country that is doing business with Europe at this point is trying to reach what's called adequacy with GDPR. And that means they're protecting European subject data and their own subjects' data in the same ways that GDPR requires the data to be protected. So we're seeing this in Japan, we're seeing it in Brazil, we're seeing it in New Zealand and Australia. These jurisdictions, these countries, want to be able to continue trading. And so what I think is fascinating is that effectively privacy and data protection regulations have become a tariff.
Now, do you think for marketers that the EU's GDPR has been a force for good?
I think it's a little too early to say. That said, the clients that I work with who really embrace the spirit of GDPR as opposed to, checking boxes to be compliant, they've seen some really interesting benefits. So one financial services client that I work with has taken GDPR and turned it into a privacy experience design conversation. That's been really interesting to watch. I have other clients who've said, in doing all of our data flows and all of our data mapping and data audits, first of all, we discovered an awful lot of redundancy in our data, but we also managed to think about data strategy in a different way. And so they're seeing some benefits there. I think from all of those perspectives, it's really good. The flip side is, at least in the short term, it does seem to have reinforced some of the dominance of the big first-party data platforms who are able to get consent from their customers, who, the walled gardens, as we talk about them. So it has reinforced a little bit of market dominance for those folks. I think that's a short-term situation, though.
So some of those large players, the walled gardens, have been very effective at working up lots of third-party data integrations and data partnerships to enable marketers to reach people with targeted communications at scale. What do you think the biggest problems are with third-party data sets, with what's going on in the regulatory environment?
Yeah, there's that word transparency again. When you are acquiring third-party data as a marketer, first of all, you really don't know the provenance of that data. So that's risky in and of itself. But on top of that, we run into this problem where if your customer comes in and says, how did you get my information? Or what do you know about me? Or why have you shown me this ad? And you've built that on the basis of third-party data, that exposes a fair amount of risk when you have to then turn around and expose that to the customer. So I think third-party data has some challenges from that perspective, but frankly, third-party data is also often incredibly inaccurate.
Right.
Anyone who has looked at their interests and likes and why you're seeing this ad on some of the social media platforms can tell you that they've been put into 3 different household income brackets, and they really have teenagers, but they're showing as being interested in toddler products. There's a lot of really bad and messy data in third-party data aggregation.
And the walled gardens as well. I'm registered as living in the UK on Facebook, and I'm not. I'm living in Denver, so you can't go further.
Are they really
wrong than
listening?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that you and Forrester in particular talk about is zero-party data as being a possible solution for marketers to drive personalization in this new age of privacy. So, firstly, what is zero-party data?
Yeah, so zero-party data is what we marketers historically might have called declared data. The reason that I wanted to get away from that terminology is to kind of make it parallel with the other kinds of data that we talk about. So there's first-party data, the stuff that you as a marketer and a company acquire in the course of a transaction. So you get my email address and my phone number and my credit card number. That's all first-party data. There's third-party data, which we've also already talked about. There's second-party data that businesses can collaborate with each other, sort of cooperate and build co-ops or build data sharing contracts between partners. That's second-party data. Zero-party is the data that a customer explicitly and intentionally shares with your company, and it is gold.
So, good question, because you're very clear on giving different categorizations to these different data sets, but there is some debate on social media amongst people in the marketing and advertising ecosystem that zero-party data is just first-party data with a millennial rebrand. What do you say to folks that say that?
Well, I think that the reason that zero-party data is different is when a customer trusts a brand enough to provide this really meaningful data, it means that the brand doesn't have to go off and infer what the customer wants or what her intentions are. First-party data doesn't let us do that. I might be clicking around on your website, and that's first-party data, and you might make assumptions about I'm in the market for this product, or I've got this kind of child at home, or whatever. But until you ask me, you don't really know. And that is different. That is a fundamentally different kind of personal information than first-party data.
So you think that a zero-party data strategy is actually going to help with consumers' trust towards brands?
Big time. And I think it's a phenomenal barometer of trust. If customers are actually willing to share this information with you, companies should be thinking about that as a key performance indicator, as a metric to measure. If you have people engaging with your zero-party data platforms, whether that's a preference center or a digital experience or a survey or a poll, they trust you enough to give you that information. The higher your engagement rates, the more they trust you.
So what tools can marketers use to collect zero-party data?
Yeah, so I alluded to one of them, which is preference centers. And we see an increase, a really big increase in interest in preference centers. And this is where a customer might actually go in and manage her content preferences, her channel preferences. I want to get email or I want to get mobile notifications, and what she wants those to be about. Then there are more sort of mobile-first digital experiences. And here you might think about things like a really engaging poll or a quiz or swiping up and down to indicate, things that you like or don't like. And also the things that you can do in stores, for example. So a recent retailer in Australia had 2 different color shopping bags at the front door of their store. And if you picked up the black basket, you wanted to shop by yourself. If you picked up the red basket, you wanted sales help. That's zero-party data in the physical world.
So one of the problems I think marketers are going to have is how do they collect this data at scale? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that Forrester have talked about and you've talked about in one of your reports, Q&A, everything a marketer needs to know about zero-party data, is you talk about the importance of offering a value exchange to consumers in return for the data, which I assume gives you the scale. Could you give us a few thoughts on that?
Sure. The value exchange question I think is important here because we are asking customers to take time. So we're saying, hey, go fill out your profile or engage with this quiz or this poll. When we do that, we need to use that data efficiently, effectively, and well. And we need to make sure that we are trading something of value for the customer. So, for example, a colleague of mine went through on a particular pet site and filled out her profile to say that she's got 2 cats, very different ages, very different health problems. Unfortunately, that site didn't personalize any of the products for the 2 cats.
Right.
So she felt really let down by that. So one of the really important things that we have to do is make sure that the zero-party data that we're capturing is actually integrating on the back end with our CRM systems, with our DMPs, with the platforms that we're actually using to engage customers. That's really, really critical. So it does take a little bit of a technical integration, but that's easy. We can solve that problem.
Right.
It's the cultural piece of getting your marketers and advertisers to adopt and embrace the value of zero-party data, to reduce their reliance on third-party data, and understand that they're just going to deliver better experiences to customers if they actually do value zero-party data the way it should be valued.
So, obviously integrating the data is really, really important, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. How can marketers use this data to better drive personalization across different channels?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a very personal example. I live in Northern California and I am an environmentally conscious consumer, right? And I happen to do almost all of my consumer electronics shopping with the same company, right? They've got all my consumer electronics.
Probably the same one as me.
But when I get emails from them, when I get communications from them, the stuff above the fold is about like how much faster the next computer is, not about, hey, bring in your old devices and we'll recycle them, which is a program that I know that they have. Zero-party data would let them do that. With zero-party data, they would know that I'm an environmentally conscious consumer, and so they can actually do values-based marketing to me. And that's really powerful. In other channels, it doesn't have to just be your owned channels. When you're thinking about advertising, if you can embed your zero-party data and build segments on the basis of that zero-party data, you can actually reach customers where they are on the publications that they're interested in and serve them content and advertising that's actually based on what they've told you. And it's not creepy because they know they've told you that.
Have you been able to work with any of your customers, partners, etc., to look at the value of zero-party data in terms of how people put an ROI around it?
Yeah, so for now, we're in early days. And a lot of the implementations of zero-party data tend to be more around opportunity cost or risk aversion. So people are putting into place things like preference centers and profile management to reduce opt-outs, for example, or to reduce ad blocking, that sort of stuff. So right now, early days, we're still really seeing the focus be there. However, as I mentioned earlier, I think we start to measure trust on the basis of engagement. I think that's an important one. I think we can actually measure the ROI of conversions and the return on marketing investment when we start embedding zero-party data and leveraging it more deeply across the entire marketing and advertising ecosystem. And that actually makes a big difference, because now we're not just talking about ROMI, we're also talking about saving money on third-party data.
Right. Right, and obviously, as a company, we help our customers collect zero-party data at scale, and so we're looking at the ROI and the value of zero-party data records, and it does differ wildly between different industries, as one would expect. But an industry that's very close to my heart is soccer, football for people in Europe. But we work with a whole variety of the world's largest soccer clubs. And what we've been able to see through working with these guys is actually it's just over $100 per year that they can get for a zero-party data record. So if you can capture information coming into your database with a set of profile attributes which allow them to understand the type of fan and therefore how they can merchandise and monetize that fan, that's over $100 a year, which, when you're starting to collect millions of data records, becomes very valuable very quickly.
That's right.
So my final question is, how quickly, because obviously we're at the early days, this is a big change, everything's going on at privacy, marketers' strategies are having to adapt and evolve. How quickly are we going to see brands adopt a zero-party data strategy?
I think it's going to be a lot faster than we might have thought a year ago. I think with the advent of, for example, cookie consent, which is now the bane of every European marketer's existence, right? If you begin to think about your cookie consent mechanism as a first step in zero-party data collection, you can start to build experiences on that. You don't have to ask that person for consent the minute they land on your site, but 2 clicks in, and oh, by the way, we see that you've clicked on this particular part of our page. Are you in the market for? Is there anything we can help you find? What can we help you with? And so you're hitting all of the important things there. You're getting consent, you are delivering value, and you're capturing information about the customer's intentions and needs. So I actually think GDPR was a phenomenal driver or catalyst for zero-party data to start with, and I think this is just going to continue. Customers want really engaging experiences online, and as we talked about at the beginning, they want personalization and they want privacy. So this notion of zero-party data and building experiences that are engaging, memorable, and telemetric, so actually collecting data within the experience, it's going to go a long way.
Fatemeh, thank you very much.
It was great to be here, Richard. Thank you so much.
You've now listened to Fatemeh about zero-party data and how it is a solution for marketers to actually drive personalization in the new age of privacy and increase consumer trust. So, how can Weigh-In help? Well, Weigh-In's platform has a range of different interactive mechanics that provide a value exchange for you as a brand to collect zero-party data directly from consumers. We've actually collected over 2 billion zero-party data records since we started. We're collecting about 60 million zero-party data records a month on behalf of 150 customers. So we really have cracked the ability to do that at scale. And the experiences that you can easily create as a non-technical marketer on the Weigh-In platform can be published to a range of different digital destinations. It could be embedded in your website, it could be delivered through an interactive ad on Google or AppNexus, it could be embedded into a branded mobile app or as a call to action on a social story. Wherever you want to engage the consumer and collect zero-party data, we've got the platform, the tools, and the mechanics to help you do that at scale and get ahead in this new economy where privacy and personalization can exist.